Real Madrid spent 225 million euros this summer. The most expensive signing in the club's entire history sat on the bench, and the game was won in the 90th minute by the cheapest man they bought off a loose ball after Kylian Mbappé gave it away. The 22nd of August, the RCDE Stadium in Barcelona. José Mourinho's first match in charge of Real Madrid in 13 years. It started the way the money says it should. Ninth minute, Arda Güler delivers, Jude Bellingham heads it in. 1-0, then it stopped. 30th minute, Javi Hernandez cuts it back, Alex Calatrava finishes. 1-1. Espanyol, a side that finished nowhere near the top of the table, level with a team that had just rebuilt itself for €250 million. And it stayed that way for an hour. Look at who Madrid put on the pitch that night. Marc Cucurella, Denzel Dumfries, Bernardo Silva, three players making their first appearance in Spanish football, all starting the same match. The last time Real Madrid did that was 2009. Cristiano Ronaldo, Kaká, Karim Benzema, the Galacticos. On the bench sat Yan Diomande, €125 million from RB Leipzig, rising to 140 with add-ons. The most expensive footballer this club has ever bought in its entire history. He came on in the second half. He did not score. And in the 90th minute, Kylian Mbappé lost the ball. It broke loose in the box. And the player who reached it was a 21-year-old who had been at Levante 4 weeks earlier, Carlos Espí. €25 million, the cheapest signing of Real Madrid's summer. 2-1. To understand why that goal mattered so much, you have to understand what Real Madrid just came out of. Because this club did not hire José Mourinho because things were going well. They hired him after the worst 2 years they have had this century. And the numbers on that are genuinely difficult to look at. 2 seasons, no trophies. For Real Madrid, that is not a bad run. That is a crisis. Start with last season, second in La Liga, 86 points. Barcelona won it with 94. Out of the Champions League in the quarterfinals, beaten by Bayern Munich 6-4 on aggregate, beaten in the final of the Spanish Super Cup by Barcelona 3-2, and knocked out of the Copa del Rey in the round of 16 by Albacete, a second division club, 3-2. Now the managers. Xabi Alonso arrived to replace Carlo Ancelotti. He lasted 34 games. On the 12th of January, one day after losing that Super Cup final to Barcelona, Madrid and Alonso parted ways by mutual agreement. Álvaro Arbeloa was promoted from the club's B team to replace him. The Albacete defeat and the Bayern elimination both happened on his watch. So 3 managers inside a single calendar year. And then there is the 7th of May. Aurélien, Tchouaméni, and Federico Valverde, 2 of the most important midfielders at the club, got into a fight in training. Valverde was left unconscious. Both players were fined €500,000. That is the dressing room José Mourinho walked into, not a team that needed tightening, a building that had stopped functioning. Kylian Mbappé, in the middle of all that, was the top scorer in Spain with 25 league goals, 42 in all competitions, which tells you the problem was never the talent. Here is the part of this story that almost nobody reported properly, and it is the part that tells you the most about how Real Madrid is actually run, because the decision to hire José Mourinho was not made after the members voted. It was made before. Real Madrid is not owned by a person or a fund. It is owned by its members, roughly 100,000 of them. And when the season ended without a trophy for the second year running, Florentino Perez called an election for the board. On the 21st of May, a businessman named Enrique Riquelme announced he was standing against him. Riquelme campaigned on restoring the club's Spanish identity. More Spanish players, more of the academy in the first team. On the 27th, Perez formally launched his own campaign. Perez won. Now here is the detail. José Mourinho had already signed a 3-year contract, agreed in advance, written to take effect once the votes were counted. So the manager of Real Madrid for the next 3 years was decided before the members of Real Madrid voted on who should run Real Madrid. That is not illegal. It is not even unusual in the way big clubs actually work. Perez had been open that Mourinho was his choice. If you voted for Perez, you knew what you were getting. But it does answer a question people kept asking all summer. Why Mourinho at 63, 13 years after he left, when the football world had largely moved on from him? The answer is that he was not chosen by a football department after a search. He was chosen by a president who needed to win an election and who needed a name big enough to change the subject. And then, having won it, he had to make that name work. So Real Madrid went out and spent, and the way they spent is the single strangest thing about this summer, because they broke the biggest transfer record in the club's history, and then the player who won them the game cost 1/5 of that. 225 million euros out, 184.5 million back in from sales, most of it, and this matters, from academy players. Jan Diomandi from RB Leipzig, 125 million rising to 140 with add-ons, the most expensive signing in the entire history of Real Madrid, more than Bellingham, more than Hazard, more than Bale, more than Cristiano Ronaldo. Marc Cucurella from Chelsea, 55 million. Denzel Dumfries from Inter, 20 million. Ibrahima Konate, free from Liverpool. Bernardo Silva, free from Manchester City. And Carlos Espí, 25 million euros from Levante. He is 21. He is 1 meter 94. He scored 11 league goals last season and was named La Liga's Under-23 Player of the Year. Madrid did not negotiate for him. They paid his release clause, exactly 25 million, the figure Levante had written into his contract that spring. It was the biggest sale in Levante's history for a player they produced themselves. Now hold that next to the one they did not get. All summer, Real Madrid wanted a holding midfielder. They wanted Rodri. They got as far as deciding which of their own midfielders they would sell to pay for him, and Rodri chose Barcelona. So the squad that walked out at Espanyol was built around a hole where the most important signing was supposed to be. That is the context for the 90th minute. And then there is the man himself. Because when people say José Mourinho already succeeded at Real Madrid, they are right. But the record they quote and the reason he left are two completely different stories. And only one of them tells you what happens next. Mourinho's first spell ran from 2010 to 2013. He won La Liga once, the Copa del Rey once, the Spanish Super Cup once. But the league title he won is the best domestic season in the club's history. Not one of the best, 100 points. At the time, a record for any major European league, 121 goals, 32 wins, 16 of them away from home. A goal difference of plus 89. That is the part everybody quotes. Here is the part they leave out. He never won the Champions League with Real Madrid. He went out in the semi-finals 3 years in a row, and the ending was ugly. Public arguments with journalists, with referees, with opposing managers, with the club's own legends, with his own players. He left by mutual consent in 2013, and he described that final season, the one without a trophy, as the worst of his career. Then 13 years passed. Chelsea again, Manchester United, Tottenham, Roma, Fenerbahce, where he was sacked 2 days after going out of the Champions League. So the man walking back into the Bernabeu is not the man who left it. He is 63. His last job ended in a sacking, and he is being asked to do something he did not manage the first time at a club with a worse dressing room than the one he had then, none of which was answered by beating Espanyol. So what did that 90th minute actually prove? Not much about Mourinho, honestly. One game tells you almost nothing. But it did prove something about how this squad was assembled, and that part is worth taking seriously because it repeats. Go back to the pitch at the RCDE Stadium. The 125 million euro signing came off the bench and did not score. The 200 million euro forward lost the ball in the 90th minute, and the 25 million euro striker who 4 weeks earlier was playing for Levante put it away. That is not an argument that expensive players are bad. Bellingham scored the first goal. Güler made it. Both of those cost real money. It is an argument about a habit. Real Madrid keeps buying the biggest available name and keeps being rescued by somebody cheaper. They sold 184 million euros of their own academy this summer to help pay for players from other people's academies. Riquelme built an entire election campaign on exactly that point and lost. And three debutantes started this match. The last time that happened was 2009 with Ronaldo, Kaká, and Benzema. That comparison is meant to flatter. It should not. That team also spent enormously, also arrived to fix a club in crisis, and also did not win the Champions League for another 5 years. Mourinho has 3 years and a squad that is missing the midfielder it was designed around. He got 1 point more than a draw at Espanyol in the 90th minute from the cheapest man he had. So here is the question. If you spend 225 million euros and the difference is made by the player who cost the least, what exactly did the other 200 million buy?